The wind carried the desert's loneliness through the narrow streets of Dry Creek, a small old west town where the sun baked the boards and silence lingered after sunset. Only one place dared to stay awake after dark, the Silver Spur Saloon, inside. Lamplight flickered against amber bottles and worn piano keys. A woman stood behind the counter, polishing glasses that never seemed to stay clean. Evelyn Hart, 30 years old and already tired of men who talked too loud and cared too little, had learned to live alone. Her husband had died 3 years ago, a man who gambled more than he loved her, and the saloon was all she had left of that broken life. The night was long and quiet. Then she heard it, 3 knocks at the saloon's wooden door. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Evelyn froze. The lamp swayed gently from the wind, but something about that sound felt different. Not a drunk, not a cowboy looking for whiskey. It was steady. Patient. She hesitated before unlatching the door. There he stood, a tall Apache warrior, his face half hidden by shadow and moonlight. His long black hair fell past his shoulders, and his bare chest glowed faintly under the cold silver sky. Tribal beads hung from his neck, and his eyes, dark and still as a canyon pool, met hers without fear or demand. Evelyn's breath caught. She had seen natives before, usually from a distance, but never like this. Never one who came to her door alone. "I'm not looking for trouble," she whispered. He said nothing for a long moment, then spoke softly. "I seek shelter. Just for the night." His voice carried the low rumble of the earth, quiet but commanding. Evelyn hesitated. The town wouldn't take kindly to her letting an Apache inside, but the desert was unforgiving at night. She looked past him. No horse, no blanket, no weapon in hand. "You can stay," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "One night." "That's all." He nodded once. "One night." She locked the door behind him, aware of the danger, the gossip that would spread if anyone knew. Yet something about his calmness steadied her heart. He moved to the far corner of the saloon, sitting near the dying fire. Evelyn poured a glass of water and set it on the table. "You have a name?" He looked up. "Talon." She almost smiled. "Like the claw?" "Like the hawk," he corrected gently. The silence between them felt heavy but not uncomfortable. She returned to cleaning the bar, though her hands trembled slightly. Outside, the wind howled against the shutters, and the rain began to fall in fine, silver needles. After a while, she poured herself a drink, whiskey, 2 fingers, and sat across from him. "You from one of the southern bands?" He nodded slowly. "My people call me Gone. I walk alone now." Evelyn felt something stir, pity, perhaps, or recognition. She too was a ghost among the living. "We've all lost something," she murmured. Talon looked at her then. Really looked, as if he could see through the pain she'd buried under years of silence and liquor. His gaze softened. "You keep this place alive," he said, "but you do not live." The words struck her like a bullet. She looked away, pretending to laugh. "You talk too wise for a man freezing in my saloon." But his eyes didn't waver. As the night deepened, they talked little. Yet something wordless passed between them, a fragile thread of warmth in a world that had long gone cold. When she finally offered him the cot behind the bar, he shook his head. "I will sleep by the fire," he said. "It is enough?" She left him there, lying on the floor near the dying flames, his eyes closed, his breathing steady. But she couldn't sleep. She kept watching him from the stairs, that strange, solemn figure, the quiet strength in his stillness. For the first time in years, Evelyn didn't feel alone. When dawn came, he was gone, no note, no goodbye. Just a few footprints in the sand outside the door. Evelyn stood there, staring out into the morning haze, wondering if he had been real at all. But that night, when the lamps burned low again and the town fell silent, she heard it, 3 knocks at the saloon door, He had come back. The second night came with thunder crawling across the sky. The rain began early, turning the red dust into dark mud, and the Silver Spur Saloon glowed like a lantern against the gloom. Evelyn Hart had tried to convince herself that the previous night had been a dream. But when those 3 slow knocks came again, the same rhythm, the same weight, her heart skipped like a frightened bird. She walked toward the door, her palms slick against the handle. The lamps flickered, the piano creaked from the wind. And there he was again, Talon, standing tall, rain tracing the curves of his chest and shoulders, his long black hair clinging to his back. "You again," she whispered. He nodded once. "You said one night. I come again to see if it was true." Evelyn folded her arms, half to hide the tremble in her hands. "You shouldn't be here. If the sheriff sees you—" "I do not fear your sheriff," Talon interrupted calmly. "But I thought you might need fire. It will storm tonight." For a moment, Evelyn simply looked at him. The world outside was soaked and endless. Inside, the silence felt too large. Against her better judgment, she stepped aside. "Fine, but only until morning." Talon entered, his footsteps soft on the wood floor. Water dripped from his hair as he moved toward the hearth. Evelyn threw him a towel and watched as he dried himself, each motion unhurried, almost ceremonial. "I thought Apaches kept to the hills," she said quietly. "I kept," he replied. "Now I walk where the spirits send me." "And they sent you here?" He looked at her, his dark eyes steady. "They sent me to where the lonely light burns." Evelyn turned away before he could see the heat rise in her cheeks. She busied herself behind the bar, pouring 2 drinks, her fingers brushing the smooth neck of the bottle. When she handed him the glass, their fingertips touched, brief, electric. They sat across from each other as thunder rolled in the distance. The saloon creaked under the weight of rain, but neither spoke for a long time. The world outside could have drowned and they wouldn't have noticed. "You've lost someone," Talon said finally. Evelyn blinked. "That obvious?" He nodded once. "Your eyes carry ghosts." She stared into her glass. "My husband. 3 years ago. He died in a card fight right in this room. He was drunk and jealous. I buried him myself." Talon didn't answer immediately. "And still you stay." "This saloon's all I've got," she said bitterly. "He left me debts, enemies, and whispers. But I've got walls, whiskey, and a roof. That's more than some." The fire crackled between them, glowing orange and gold. Talon's expression didn't change, but his voice grew softer. "A cage with gold bars is still a cage." Evelyn's throat tightened. She wanted to argue, to push him away, but his words echoed too true. "And what about you, Talon? You talk like a man running from something." He hesitated, the first time she'd seen him unsure. "My people fell to hunger and guns. I buried my brother in a riverbed and left before the soldiers came back. I walk now, to remember." For a long while neither spoke. The storm outside deepened, rain pounding the roof like 1,000 hooves. Evelyn poured more whiskey. "Seems both of us are ghosts, then." He met her eyes. "Maybe ghosts find each other for a reason." The words hung between them like smoke. Evelyn's heart thudded painfully. She didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or run. Instead, she reached for his hand, a moment that felt both foolish and inevitable. Talon didn't move away. His hand was warm, steady, scarred. "If I stay tonight," he said softly, "you will not fear me?" Evelyn shook her head. "No, I think I fear myself more." The fire dimmed to embers as the storm raged on. The wind howled through the shutters, but inside the Silver Spur, the air grew heavy with something unspoken, a fragile peace that neither of them dared name. When dawn came, he was gone again, leaving behind only a small turquoise bead on the bar where he'd sat. Evelyn held it tightly in her palm, feeling its cool surface against her skin. That night, she didn't wait for the knocks. She lit the lamps early, brushed her hair, and kept glancing at the door, and when the 3 familiar knocks echoed once more, her lips parted, not in fear this time, but in something dangerously close to longing. By the 3rd night, word had already begun to spread through Dry Creek. Somebody had seen Talon leaving the Silver Spur before sunrise, a tall, shirtless Apache walking out of a white woman's saloon. In a town where whispers traveled faster than bullets, that was enough to start a storm fiercer than any rain. Evelyn felt it as soon as she stepped out for supplies. The grocer's wife refused to meet her eyes. The blacksmith muttered under his breath. Even the preacher's wife crossed the street when she saw her coming. She tried to ignore it, keeping her chin high as she carried the sack of flour back to the saloon. But deep down, her stomach twisted with worry. She hadn't done anything wrong, had she? That night, she left the lamps unlit for a long while, pacing the floor, telling herself she wouldn't open the door again, not this time. She'd lock it, let the rain fall, and let him pass like a ghost. But when those 3 knocks came, low and sure as always, her heart betrayed her. She hesitated for only a moment before unbolting the door. Talon stood there, hair damp from the mist, moonlight shining off his shoulders. His eyes searched hers quietly, as if asking permission to enter. "You shouldn't have come," Evelyn said softly. "I said I would return." "You don't understand. People have seen you. They're talking." "Let them," he replied. "Words are wind." She turned away, frustrated by his calm. "Wind can turn to fire real fast in this town." He stepped closer. "And will you burn with them?" Evelyn swallowed hard. His nearness stirred something wild inside her, something that didn't care what the town thought. "I don't know anymore," she whispered. He moved past her and sat by the fire like before, quiet and steady. His presence filled the room, a strange comfort against the storm outside. Evelyn watched him from the bar, her heart caught between fear and longing. After a while, she poured 2 drinks again. "You said your people are gone," she began softly. "But where do you go when you leave here?" Talon looked into the flames. "I follow the trail of my brother. He was taken by soldiers before the snows came. I search the forts, the camps, the towns. All I find are lies and graves." Her voice trembled. "You think he's still alive?" He didn't answer right away. "Hope dies slow," he said finally. Evelyn lowered her eyes. "I know that feeling." They drank in silence for a time, the only sound the ticking of rain against the windows. The air between them grew heavy with everything unsaid. Then the door creaked again, this time not from the wind. Evelyn turned sharply. A man stood in the doorway, Sheriff Kael Benson, tall, grizzled, with a face carved from suspicion. "Evenin', Miss Hart," he said slowly. His gaze moved past her and landed on Talon. "Didn't expect to find company." Evelyn's pulse raced. "Sheriff, it's not what it looks like. Looks like you've got yourself a wild one," Benson said, hand resting on his holster. "You know the law, don't you? Town ordinance don't take kindly to Indians hanging round our womenfolk." Talon rose to his full height, unflinching. "I mean no harm," he said calmly. The sheriff sneered. "That's not your decision to make." Evelyn stepped forward, anger flaring through her fear. "He's done nothing wrong." "You'd rather run him out than offer him warmth on a cold night?" Benson's eyes narrowed. "You'd best mind your tone, Evelyn. Folks are already talking. Don't give him reason to say worse." He tipped his hat and backed out, but his parting words lingered like poison. "If I see him here again, I'll drag him to the edge of town myself." The door slammed, leaving only the crackle of fire and Evelyn's ragged breathing. Talon stood silent, unreadable. You should not have spoken for me, he said softly. I won't let them treat you like an animal, she shot back. Not here. His gaze softened. Then you put yourself in danger. Evelyn shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. Maybe I already was. Outside, thunder rolled again. And she knew what it meant. The line between her and the rest of Dry Creek had been drawn. That night. When Talon reached for her hand, she didn't pull away. For the first time in years, Evelyn Hart didn't feel trapped by walls or rules, only by the pull of a man who shouldn't have kept coming back. Yet did and somewhere deep down, she realized she didn't want him to stop. By morning, the town had turned its back on her. Evelyn Hart could feel it in the way people went quiet when she passed, the way doors closed halfway down Main Street, the way even the church bell sounded colder. The gossip had grown claws. They said she'd let the Apache sleep in her bed, that she was harboring a savage, that she'd lost her mind. She tried to keep her hands busy sweeping, polishing, serving drinks to the few who still came. But nothing could quiet the ache in her chest. Every sound outside made her flinch, wondering if it was him, or the sheriff, or both. That evening, as the sun bled across the desert, she stepped outside for air. The horizon burned with orange and violet, and the wind carried the scent of rain. She heard a sound behind her, soft, familiar. 3 knocks. Her heart leapt, though her hands trembled. When she opened the door, Talon stood there again, silent, strong, and shadowed by the fading light. You came back, she whispered. He nodded. You were waiting. Evelyn exhaled shakily. You shouldn't be here. The sheriff, let him come, Talon said, his voice low. I am not afraid. She looked at him, really looked, at the calm fire in his eyes, the scars across his chest, the beads that caught the lamplight like captured stars. Something inside her broke then, not from fear, but from the weight of pretending she didn't want him here. She stepped closer. Why do you keep coming back, Talon? He hesitated. When I walk the land, I hear nothing. When I stand here, I hear the world again. Her breath caught. That's not an answer. He smiled faintly. It is mine. They stood in silence, the air thick with words neither dared to say. Then Evelyn reached up, brushed a strand of his wet hair from his face, and whispered, You'll get me killed, you know that. He took her hand gently, pressing it to his chest. Then we will die honest. Before she could speak, he leaned in, and for the first time, their lips met. It wasn't soft or shy. It was desperate, the collision of 2 lonely souls who had run out of ways to stay apart. The fire crackled beside them as rain began to fall outside, tapping the windows like a drumbeat of fate. When they finally pulled apart, her eyes glistened. Stay tonight, she whispered. No more running. I will stay, he said simply, that night. The saloon's lamps burned lower than ever, and the wind howled through Dry Creek as if the desert itself knew what had begun inside those walls. Hours passed, quiet, slow, fragile. Evelyn sat by the fire with her head on Talon's shoulder, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing. He spoke little, but his presence said enough. Do you ever wish you could start over? She asked softly. He looked into the flames. A man cannot walk backward, only forward. She nodded, though her voice trembled. Then I'll walk with you. Talon turned toward her. If you choose that path, there is no coming back. I have nothing to come back to, she replied. He touched her face with a tenderness that startled her, as if she were made of glass. Then you will need to be strong. I already am, she whispered. Before dawn, they lay together in silence, the world beyond their walls forgotten. The storm had passed, but the stillness that followed felt heavy with change. When Evelyn woke, the fire had gone cold, and Talon was gone again. Only the faint scent of smoke and leather lingered in the air. Her heart twisted. She rose, stepping outside into the pale morning. The desert was calm, the town quiet, too quiet. And then she saw a dot far on the horizon. A dark line of riders approached, men with rifles, their dust rising like a warning. She didn't need to ask who they were. The sheriff was leading them, and this time they weren't coming for whiskey, they were coming for Talon and for her. Morning came with dread pressing heavy against Evelyn's chest. The town had gone still, the kind of stillness that warned of a coming storm, not of weather, but of men. From the porch of the Silver Spur, Evelyn watched the riders draw closer through the dust. Sheriff Kael Benson led them, his badge flashing in the rising sun, a band of townsmen behind him armed with rifles and the kind of anger that fed on fear. They stopped outside the saloon. Evelyn could see the hate in their eyes, men who once drank her whiskey, now looking at her like she'd turned into something unholy. Benson dismounted slowly, his spurs clicking against the wooden planks as he approached. "Morning, Evelyn," he said, tipping his hat in mock politeness. "We need to have a word." She met his gaze, steady but cold. "If it's about your drink tab, you can pay it like everyone else." A few of the men snickered, but Benson didn't smile. "This ain't about whiskey. It's about that Apache you've been harboring. Word is, he's been here more nights than one." Evelyn folded her arms. "He's done nothing wrong." "That's where you're mistaken," the sheriff said. "His kind brings trouble wherever they go. Now, you either tell me where he is, or I'll have no choice but to search this place myself." Evelyn's pulse pounded in her ears. Talon wasn't inside, not anymore, but she had no intention of letting them treat him like prey. "He's not here," she said evenly. "He came for shelter from the storm, that's all." Benson's eyes narrowed. "You expect me to believe he just wandered off?" Evelyn stepped closer, her chin raised. "Believe what you want. But if you think I'll help you hunt a man who's done nothing but survive, you're wrong." For a long moment, no one moved. The wind rustled the flags on the sheriff's saddle, and the dust swirled between them. Then Benson leaned in, his voice low and venomous. "You're digging your own grave. Miss Hart, a woman seen with a savage ain't got no place in Dry Creek. You've got until sundown to change your mind." He turned and mounted his horse, the others following. As they rode away, Evelyn's hand shook, not from fear, but from fury. Inside, the saloon felt colder than ever. She poured herself a drink and tried to still her breathing. She didn't know where Talon was, but somehow she felt he knew what was coming. As the day wore on, the town buzzed with tension. Men loaded rifles. Women whispered by the well. By late afternoon, dark clouds rolled in again, the kind that brought lightning and trouble. When the first drops of rain began to fall, she heard it. 3 knocks. Her heart jumped. She ran to the door and flung it open. Talon stood there, drenched from the storm, his eyes sharp but calm. The turquoise beads around his neck glistened in the rain. "They come," he said simply. "I know," she whispered. "They'll be here by nightfall." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "You should leave this place. It is not safe." "I'm not leaving you," she said fiercely. "Not after everything." Talon's jaw tightened. "Evelyn, this fight is not yours." "Yes, it is," she said. "Because the moment I opened that door the first night, you stopped being a stranger." He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. As if he'd known all along she'd say that. "Then we fight together." They began to prepare. Evelyn loaded the old shotgun behind the bar while Talon checked the windows and bolted the doors. The storm outside grew louder, lightning flashing across the dusty street. When the first riders appeared in the distance, Evelyn's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. "They'll kill you," she whispered. Talon turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Not before I see the sky one last time." Thunder cracked above them, shaking the saloon walls. Evelyn stepped closer, her hand brushing his arm. "If we don't make it," he stopped her with a look, "then we meet again in the wind." The hoofbeats drew nearer. Shadows moved through the rain, and as the first gunshot echoed through Dry Creek, Evelyn realized there was no turning back. The Silver Spur had become a battlefield, and love, for the first time in her life, was something she was willing to die for. The next evening, the desert was restless. Winds carried the scent of rain and something deeper memory. Evelyn sat alone in her saloon, the lamps dimmed, her eyes fixed on the empty chair across from her. That was where Kael had sat the last time, his deep voice whispering things she had not forgotten, things that still echoed in her veins. All day she had told herself he wouldn't come, that he couldn't keep returning like this. But when night came and the faint sound of hoofbeats stirred the silence outside, her breath caught in her throat. She rose, her heart pounding against her ribs. The saloon's doors creaked open with the softest groan. The desert wind followed him in. Kael, the Apache warrior, stood there again. Shirtless, his skin bronzed by the sun, his long black hair damp from the heat of travel, and the glint of tribal jewelry shimmered against his chest. "Evelyn," he said softly, his accent wrapping her name like smoke. "You knew I would come." "I told you not to," she whispered, her voice trembling with a storm of emotion. "Every time you walk through that door, it feels like the world stops. And I can't live like that, Kael." Kael stepped closer. "Then let the world stop." She tried to turn away, but his hand found hers, rough from years of battle and journey, yet gentle, too gentle for the kind of man the world said he was. His eyes searched hers, those dark, endless eyes that saw straight into the truth of her heart. "You don't belong here," she said. "The townsfolk talk. They say I've been cursed since you came. Business has slowed. Men won't even sit at my tables anymore. And still," Kael said quietly, "you light the lamp for me." Evelyn's lips parted, but no words came. She wanted to deny it, to say that she lit it out of habit or loneliness, but she couldn't lie to him. The truth was carved into her heartbeat. She did light it for him. Every night since that first one they'd shared. He stepped closer still, his shadow stretching across the wooden floor. "I never meant to bring trouble to your door," he murmured. "But I can't stay away. The night you held me, something in me changed." Evelyn looked down at their joined hands. "You're a man of the wild, Kael. I'm just a saloon woman with too many ghosts and not enough courage." Kael leaned close, his breath warm against her cheek. "You have more courage than any woman I've known. You opened your heart when the world told you to lock it away." For a moment, they stood in silence. The lamp flickered. The piano in the corner caught a draft and released a single ghostly note. Then she said, almost to herself, "Do you ever think about that night?" His voice was a low rumble. Every time the wind moves through the pines, something inside her broke. She turned toward him fully, the ache in her chest spilling into tears she hadn't meant to shed. "Then why do you keep coming back, Kael? Why not forget me? You have a people, a home, a world I can't touch." He reached out, brushing a strand of auburn hair from her face. "Because when I left, I felt empty. I went back to the hills, to the fire, to the chance of my brothers. But every shadow looked like you. Every flame spoke your name. You became the spirit of my nights." Evelyn pressed a trembling hand against his chest, felt the strong, steady beat of his heart beneath her palm. "And what if I can't be yours?" Kael's jaw tightened, but his eyes softened. "Then I will still come when the moon calls your name." Outside, thunder rolled across the horizon, shaking the glass in the windows. A storm was coming, not just in the sky, but in their lives. Kael turned toward the door, his silhouette carved by lightning. "Tomorrow," he said quietly, "the townsmen will come. They'll call me a trespasser. They'll try to end what they don't understand. Evelyn's breath hitched. Then don't come back. He smiled, a sad, knowing smile. You know I will. And with that, the Apache warrior stepped into the rain, leaving her standing in the half-lit room. Her hand pressed against her heart, where his warmth still lingered like a promise and a curse entwined. Rain fell through the night, beating against the saloon windows like the drumming of distant war songs. Evelyn sat alone, staring at the empty doorway where Kael had vanished. The fire in the stove had died to a whisper of embers, but her heart was still burning, with fear, with longing, with something too deep to name. Outside, thunder rolled over the plains. She had not slept, not even for a moment. Every creak of the saloon floor made her turn her head, hoping, praying it was him. But dawn came before he did. Then she heard it, the sound of horses. More than one. Dozens. Evelyn rushed to the window. Through the morning mist, she saw a line of armed men from the town, rifles on their shoulders, faces grim. Sheriff Dalton rode at the front, his coat soaked, his eyes set with purpose. She knew what they had come for. Kael. Her pulse quickened. She ran to the door, throwing it open as the sheriff reined in his horse. Dalton, please, tell me you're not doing this, she pleaded, her voice raw. He shook his head. Evelyn, I warned you. That Apache's been coming around too often. The men are scared. Last night, a cattle rancher swore he saw smoke signals on the ridge. That's not Kael, she said desperately. He's never hurt anyone. But Dalton cut her off. It doesn't matter what he's done. It's what folks believe he'll do. Fear doesn't need proof. Her hands trembled as the men rode past, heading toward the hills. Toward him. Evelyn didn't think. She grabbed her cloak, mounted the old gray mare tied beside the saloon, and rode after them. The wind whipped her hair, and the smell of wet sage filled the air as the rising sun painted the desert in bleeding gold dot by the time she reached the ridge. Gunfire cracked through the morning stillness. Kael? She screamed, sliding from her horse. Smoke curled from between the rocks where he stood, defiant and unarmed. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, rainwater glistening across his skin. Around his neck, the turquoise and bone jewelry caught the light like a shield of spirit and pride. The sheriff's men had surrounded him, rifles trained. Stand down, Kael. Dalton shouted. You're trespassing on white land. Kael didn't move. His dark hair hung loose over his shoulders, his expression unreadable. This land was my people's before you ever named it, he said, his voice carrying through the wind. I come only for the woman who gave me peace. Evelyn stepped forward, pushing through the line of men. Stop, he hasn't harmed anyone. If you kill him, you'll be killing an innocent man. Dalton turned in disbelief. Evelyn, get back. But she kept walking until she stood between Kael and their guns. Her green dress clung to her from the rain, her eyes blazing. You'll have to shoot me first. The men hesitated. The storm above broke again, lightning splitting the sky, thunder shaking the ground. Kael's voice softened behind her. Evelyn, go. They'll hurt you. She turned to face him. I told you once you didn't belong here. I was wrong. Maybe it's me who doesn't belong anywhere but with you. For a long, breathless moment, no one moved. Then Dalton sighed heavily. He leaves today, he said gruffly. If he comes back, I can't stop what'll happen next time. Kael nodded. Then I'll leave when the sun reaches the canyon. The men lowered their rifles slowly, muttering, then rode off. Only the wind remained, carrying the scent of rain and gunpowder. Evelyn turned to Kael, tears mingling with the rain. You can't go, she whispered. He stepped closer, his hand brushing her cheek. If I stay, they'll destroy you. You're stronger without me. I don't want to be strong, she said. Not if it means being without you." He smiled faintly, the corners of his lips trembling. "One night was enough to change my life. I will carry that night with me always." She wrapped her arms around him, her head against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heart, that same heartbeat that had haunted her every night since they met. When he finally pulled away, the storm had broken. A shaft of sunlight cut through the clouds, painting his skin in gold. He looked back once as he mounted his horse, the wind tugging his hair. His eyes deep and eternal. "I'll come when the moon calls your name," he said softly. Then he rode away into the sun. Into the wild that had birthed him. Evelyn stood there until his silhouette vanished behind the horizon. The desert was quiet again, but it was not the same. That night, when she lit the lamp in her saloon, she swore she saw his shadow flicker in the glass, as if the spirit of Kael still lingered, answering the call of her heart.